Part 2, why you should think twice about making your friend your surrogate. Ashley continued to overstep throughout the surrogacy process. One night, she told me she didn't like the name that I picked out for my baby and started giving me recommendations on what she thought the name should be. As it got closer to the due date, Ashley told me that she had thoughts about moving in permanently and raising the baby with my fiance and I, which was never part of the plan. When I shut that down, she seemed bitter. I could tell she had developed feelings for my fiance, which made it even more awkward. I knew I made a terrible mistake picking her as my surrogate. After my daughter was born, Ashley stayed with us for a little while longer, even though it wasn't part of our initial agreement. She wanted to spend every second holding our new baby girl, and I could tell that she was getting overly attached. We decided to tell Ashley our observations and told her that she had to move out before things got worse. She didn't take this well, and when she left, she told us that she didn't want to hear from us anymore. A couple years later,
This draft is actually from a really long time ago. I think it was December. The first nail practice was for a client who said she was going to come, was going to charge her $40 for the set, and I always like to practice them before they come, and she blocked me instead of showing up.
Have you ever seen someone with extremely long hair? Well, a man from Yamata Village in Japan saw a woman with very long hair nearly down to her knees, but things were much stranger than they seemed. He was walking down a narrow street when this woman approached him, and as he walked closer, he realized that she'd been smiling the whole time. But this wasn't a normal, friendly smile. There was something strange about it that made him feel creeped out, but he smiled back anyways because he found her beautiful. This would be his last mistake. In that moment, her hair rose up and stuck to him. Strands of hair hooked onto his clothes. He ran as fast as he could, terrified. He got home quickly, locked the door, but couldn't fall asleep all night. The next morning he felt a bit better, so he opened the door to try to go to work, but he saw that on the other side his door was covered in scratches. He had run into Hariona, the long-haired woman from Japanese urban legend whose hair can turn into hooks. She's also known as the smiling woman, as she usually smiles at people from the shadows and also specifically targets men who smile back at her. Comment below what you would do if you ran into her, and follow to see more.
This is the time my mom faked her death so she didn't have to take care of me and my siblings. Yes, this girl really faked her death. So at the time, I was 5 and my little brother was 3. It started off with my mom saying that she didn't feel well and she couldn't pick me up from school, so the bus would have to take me home. Well, a few months after, she started getting picked up from our house by this black car. She said that car was picking her up because of her so-called doctor's appointments. And she wasn't able to drive herself because she was too sick. Well, one day, when this car came to pick her up, she never came home. Me and my little brother were sitting around for a couple days waiting for her to come home, but she never came home, and we were young, so we didn't do anything. Eventually, my aunt came over to our house and told my little brother and I that our mom had passed away and that she was cremated and they kept the ashes. So our aunt started taking care of us. Until one day I saw my aunt getting picked up by that same black car. That's when I started to get suspicious of everything and I decided to check these ashes. When I checked, it was flour. Like for part 2. This is part 2 of the time my mom faked her death so she didn't have to take care of me and my siblings. Like I said, my aunt told me that my mom had died and they cremated her and they let her keep the ashes and that she was going to start taking care of us. Me not knowing how long the cremating process actually took at the time since I was so young, I believed her. Until one day I saw my aunt getting picked up by the same black car that my mom used to get picked up by before she died. That's when I decided to check these supposed ashes and it was actually flour. So one day when my aunt got picked up by this black car, I decided to follow her. I didn't have a car. I was 5 years old, so I had to follow them by walking and hiding behind bushes. I was able to follow them up the street, and once they turned the corner, and there I saw my mom standing on the side of the street. That's when I see the car stop and I see my aunt get out and approach my mother. She tells my mom to give her money for covering for her and taking care of me and my little brother. Mom says she faked her death because my dad wasn't in our lives and she didn't want to take care of us anymore. I'm older now and I cut her off completely and I have full custody of my little brother.
My first time high story time, part 2. And once again, this nail art is not mine. So as I said, we started smoking. But we started smoking it like normal cigarettes, which apparently you should not do. But, you know, we didn't feel anything at first, so my friend was like, I'm gonna go get something to drink, because we knew that we would probably get, like, really dry. So she went away, and while she was away, I sat on the grass, and I started feeling my eyelids get a little heavy. So I was like, maybe I'm high now. But girl, was I wrong? I was not high yet. Because then it hit me like a truck. Like a fucking truck it hit me. And I was like, it felt like I was in a dream. And I woke up every 5 seconds. So I kind of forgot what happened the last 5 seconds every 5 seconds. So I was really confused. Part 3 is already up. First time high story time, part 3. And once again, this nail art is not mine. So I sat there and I kind of started to panic, and my heart was racing like it has never raced so fast before. And I was like, maybe I should call an ambulance on myself because I didn't want to be awake. But in the end, I decided not to because I didn't want my parents to know, you know. But my friend came back, and then everything got a little bit better because we were in this together and she was basically as high as I was. It was not good. And she told me that when she was in the store, she had stood in front of like the Red Bulls, and she had like pat this guy on the shoulder and was like, where's the Red Bulls? And he was like, it's right there in front of you. And she was like, So we were gone. Part 4 is already up. My first time high story time, part 4. And for the 4th time, this nail art is not mine. So me and my best friend, we just sat down on the grass and we laughed at everything. And, you know, we both were kind of panicking, but we decided that, you know, this is already done. We cannot back out. So let's just make the best out of it. And, you know, we laughed so much at anything, and we didn't know how to like call someone because he was like, oh, we should call your other friend. And I was like, I don't know how to call my friend. And then we started laughing, and you know, there was like this deer just ran up and everyone started laughing, and we was like, oh no, the deer knows we're high. I mean, it was bad. And also a guy came by which had like basically put his hands on my chest area when I was 14 and he was like 20, so he came, and part 5 is up. My first time high story time, part 5, and this nail art is not mine. So this guy who had basically put his hands on me, he showed up and I was like, what is going on? Like fine, but still I was like panicking, and I was like, no, like that, you know. But then, you know, everything went great, and yeah, we stopped being high after a while. But after all, I became a bit, I don't know, I wasn't feeling too good. And for like 3 months, I felt like nothing was real, and I was really like confused. I was scared, and you know, I'm an overthinker, so I always like thought about what is life, la la la, how can we be alive, and this experience just made me question it even more, so I was feeling really, really bad. But you know, it came out good after a while, so yeah, here I am, yay! My first time high story time, part 6, and this nail art is not mine. And this is like more of a aftermath thing, part 5 is story time. So I just wanted to say that I struggled with anxiety and depression for a huge part of my life, and for me, this triggered it even more. So, you know, it wasn't really good. So I just want you all out there to be careful, and you know what, don't really try weed. I mean, you can if you want to, but you should really, you know, search up some more information and like be safe and listen to yourself. And if you're going through a hard time, you shouldn't try it because it can trigger it even more, or you can get stuck to it and everything. So I just want you all to be safe out there. So sending you lots of love.
If you've ever thought about getting your ears pierced, don't do what she did. This is the urban legend about a girl in Japan who tried to do it, then ended up with horrifying consequences. So this young girl really wanted to get her ears pierced. After some pleading with her parents, they finally agreed and gave her some money to go do it. But instead, the girl kept the money and decided to pierce them herself and let her friend help her. They heated up a large needle and went for it one day. It was painful, but in the end, she was happy she could finally wear earrings. However, this wouldn't last long. One day in school, she felt an intense pain in her left ear. Her earlobe was itchy, and by the end of the day, she had a headache. She went into the bathroom and saw her ear was very inflamed. Then she looked closer and saw a piece of white string sticking out of her new piercing. She picked and pulled at it, which only made the string longer. Now it was hanging out of her earlobe. The string seemed to be endless. The more she pulled, the longer it got. Finally fed up, she took a pair of scissors and cut the string. Suddenly, everything went black. There was a burning pain in her ears and her eyes. She began to scream. In the hospital, it was revealed that it wasn't a piece of string at all. She had pulled out a piece of her optic nerve and cut it. She would be blind for the rest of her life.
Am I the asshole for throwing wine on my mom at my brother's wedding? My mom and I have always had a ... difficult relationship. I'm her scapegoat and my brother is her golden child. He can really do no wrong in her eyes. I'm expected to do housework every time I visit, while my bro sits around doing nothing. So I don't visit much and I just avoid her. Despite all this, bro and I are still very close, and I'm good friends with my sister-in-law. My mom has treated sister-in-law like shit ever since she started dating my brother 5 years ago. My bro and sister-in-law got married in October. They seized the COVID opportunity to have something small, 20 guests total, and it was in their backyard. My mom showed up in a floor-length white dress. Sister-in-law looked like she was going to cry when she saw my mom. So, without thinking, I just grabbed a bottle of red wine.
No!
Uncorked it and dumped the whole thing down my mom's front. Mom flipped out, but couldn't scream at me because there were so many people around. So, she just left with my dad and came back wearing a green dress.
So one day I was on my way home from school and I got in the house and I heard my dad doing it with my uncle's wife. So I opened the door silently to make sure I was right before I called my uncle, and I was right. My aunt was giving my dad. I then went to my room and called my uncle, and he told me to go in there and say he's pulling up in the driveway and to let him know what they do after I told them. So I walked in there and told them, and my aunt ended up jumping out the window and my dad ran down the stairs and he fell and passed out. A few minutes later, my uncle finally gets there and he gets his wedding ring, throws it down the garbage disposal, and turns it on so the ring is destroyed. He then takes my aunt and my dad to the hospital.
Hope you guys liked this video and found it helpful. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. It does help support us and lets know what videos you guys want to see.